Hey YouTube, we're at the final of the base 4 elements, which is Earth. And there's a lot to say, so let's kind of, steamroll ahead. If you've been paying attention, and I hope you have, you know that I don't consider element Earth and planet Earth to be one and the same. And what I'm talking about is that a lot of times in the pagan community, in the pagan, the more common mainstream pagan traditions, the element Earth includes every living thing on Earth. Or, at the very least, certainly it includes the plant life, trees and bushes and whatnot. And that literally was like a stone wall in my understanding of paganism as I understood it, and that's one of the reasons that I'm collecting now. Because, for me, the element Earth is standalone from plant life. It doesn't make sense to me to include that. So if you're checking him out in conjunction with, other pagan teachers, yeah, that's gonna be like a really big place where we diverge. But even leaving out the whole plant life aspect, Earth really has a lot to offer. It's very multifaceted, and each incarnation of it has its own set of meanings and metaphorical contexts that you can use for spell work. Let's see. Like water, Earth has multiple forms, and whereas water, it's all kind of the same form, and they all blend seamlessly into each other. You have ice, water, and water vapor. For me, Earth includes incarnations like dirt, rocks, metals, jewels, fossils, stones, all of it. And like I said, each incarnation of it has its own meaning. So let's take, the loose stuff, the most basic component. Literal earth, soil, clay, dust. Now, the loose stuff has like that same fill your container vibe that water had that we talked about. But unlike water, you can tamp it down. It goes from loose to firm, kind of like when you're building a sandcastle or something. It has the possibility of not just filling the container, but becoming one with that shape. Water, you put it in, you pour it out, and it just continually changes to the next container. With soil and stuff like that, you can tamp it down into the shape of the container and flip it over, and that impression is still left. Think of clay. Other things you can do with dirt is you can, stuff can be buried in it, hidden away or camouflaged. You can also use clay and mud to make bricks, concrete. You can take the loose material and build something from it, and that's something that you can't really. Okay, aside from igloos, that's something that you can't really do with, any of the other elements. Now, as we go into more solid stuff, a lot of times when you say Earth, one of the first things people think of is stability, solid, solid like a rock. And that's certainly very true. Rocks are very solid. They can be used, they make great weapons. If you think in the metaphorical context, lies, accusations, judgments, the, casting stones, but they can also be used defensively. I know this is the wrong religion, but think of David and Goliath, using what you have available to take on a larger or more fearsome opponent. That's certainly a good sort of spell to have, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed by greater odds. Let's see. Stones can also be built with, and often to as great, if not greater, effect than with clay or mud. And that whole thing is kind of why Earth is the symbol of like homes and protection, or boundaries, like a rock wall. I know we don't have them here in America, But in England, they actually have rock walls and hedges and stuff like that. Really cool stuff. And rocks come in different types. See, igneous rocks, they're formed by like literally the cooling of magma down in the crust, like a grudge left over from arguments, or feud. It's what are they called? Sedimentary rocks. Those are the ones that have layers in them, and they literally are formed from layers. The layers of mud, and silt, and old vegetation. And those are really good for working with spells that have layers to them, like a very complicated problem, or dealing with people. People are like onions. You know, our experiences and the masks that we wear every day build up until we become the layers themselves. And what's the third type of rock? Metamorphic. Metamorphic rocks, it's kind of called, when you take an existing rock and you put it in a new environment where the minerals aren't balanced. Even though it's a rock, it will still attempt to balance out the minerals, and so the minerals within the rock start moving. But obviously it's not, water is very easily changed between phases. Rock, not so much. It takes a lot more time. And so when you think of metamorphic rocks, you could imagine someone very resistant to change, but still being changed slowly. Or someone who wants to change, but is having trouble with it. Now, take a moment to think of stones, precious or semi-precious or otherwise. They tend to be used a lot in witchcraft, and it's because they're awesome. Okay, no, seriously. I love buying and looking at and handling tumbled stones. Like, you go to places and you pay $10 for a bag this size of like whatever stones that you want, and they're they're invaluable for spells because each one can have a very specific meaning to you, and generally they can be reused. Like, for example, if I wanted to do a spell involving my sister, I would use a small geode, because in my mind she's very, very like one. She presents a very rough exterior to try and deter people, but on the inside she's brilliant and beautiful. And I hope to God she never sees this, because she'll kill me for talking about her. But okay, yeah. I got some more pertinent examples. This stone, I don't know how much you can see of it. I mean, seriously, I'm not sure how good my camera works, but this one I would use in spells involving my daughter, because it's pink, which is her favorite color. It's got 2 patches of blue, just like her eyes, and it's somehow it's got a blondish color that actually reminds me of her hair. So, and this one I would use for my roommate because it's his favorite color. It's simple as that. This one reminds me of a pattern that my grandmother would wear on her clothes. And I've got a whole stack of stones and of various types of fluorine, sodalite, rose quartz. I mean, and each one is so different, and you can derive so much meaning from them. And they come in just about every color imaginable, and a lot of times you can get them carved into specific shapes if that's your sort of thing. And outside of just specific people, they have things like layers, like we talked about, like I mentioned, a tiger's eye has layers. Um, Discolorations that could represent a flaw in something, or some sort of problem within an otherwise fine situation. I mean, they're really just the workhorse, aside from candles in my work. Metals are another aspect that bear some pretty close examination. I realize that most of the elements we're using now are not, I mean, they're alloys, so they don't really come from the earth, but the metals that they are made of usually do. So I don't have much of an opinion on steel or anything like that, but the ones that I'm talking about are gold, silver, tin, copper, nickel, lead, things like that. And each one has different connotations, different meanings that you can use. Gold, for example, is beautiful, decorative, highly sought after, but it's not structurally very sound. If you've ever had 24 karat jewelry, you know that you gotta be really careful with it because it's not meant to stand up to a lot. On the other hand, we've got, plenty of other metals that aren't as pretty, but they're stronger. Kind of sounds like some people you know, right? Right? Now, metals, of course, can be shiny or dull. If they're dull, they can be polished. Some react to magnets better. Some conduct heat or electricity better than others. And metal is malleable, which means it can be hammered and pounded into thin sheets. And it's also ductile, which means that you can pull it, you can have like a lump of it and you can pull it into threads, wires, whatever. Alright, now let's get bigger. Land. I could probably go on forever about plains and valleys and deserts and beaches and my dad's farm, but let's try to keep this under 20 minutes. There are usually a few things that really stick to my mind when I think of lands in relation to Earth, and its land forms, nature's own sculptures, mountains and canyons and caverns. Each is a monument to the forces of time and change. Think about mountains that are literally formed by literally shifting the earth, land masses colliding. But even as terrible as that is and can be, a mountain is formed, something majestic that rises above the cataclysm below. And that's a very powerful sort of image, especially if you were in a time of trouble or in danger. Being able to not only survive that cataclysm, but be able to rise above it. Canyons carved out by water over time. I mean, the Grand Canyon used to be full of water, and that's an amazing thing to think about when you think of all that solid stone being worn away to create something so amazing. And even though that river's not there anymore, it still stands as a testament. It's still, its presence is still felt and seen. And if you've never been in a cavern, you really should try it. If you live in the States, see if you can manage a road trip to Missouri or Arkansas. See if you can manage a road trip to Missouri or Arkansas, because they have the most caverns, I think, in the United States, and certainly quite a few that are set up as attractions that you can go in and look safely. Please excuse my accent. Caverns. They're cold and damp and dark, but the horrid conditions there still carved out something really beautiful, and once again, it's a very powerful sort of image to be using. If you think about it, the mountains would be like ongoing strife in your life. The caverns would be strife that you've gone through over the years, and each one reflects the change that you want to take from that. Because you see, more than anything, these are the products of change. Where water is about being the change, being the river, being the water that's dripping through the cavern, or earth is the result of the change. Earth is how well we stood up to the change, how we allowed the change to alter us, what was hidden, what was concealed, what was revealed, and what was destroyed. Think about mudslides, landslides, earthquakes. Sometimes the changes, the shifts that you make are too much, and everything collapses in on itself. And you have to keep that in mind, because like all the other elements, Earth has the potential for both good and bad, reward and destruction. Back to the more mundane side of things, the colors for Earth are usually somewhere in the brown range for me. Like I said, the pagans usually use green to represent the grass life and whatnot. Like I showed you last time, this is my earth candle. If it looks kind of familiar, it's because this is my air candle. I got them at the same I got all my candles at the same place, to be honest. The reason I picked this one was because, one, it was a shade of brown. Muddy water brown, but brown nonetheless. And also because it's unscented. Until the day that somebody makes a candle that smells like potting soil, I'm kind of screwed, because cookies and chocolate and leather as candle scents really don't do it for me. I felt really lucky to find an unscented one, because like I said, I'm just picky. You might like brown yourself, or if you find yourself working with the metals a lot, you can feel free to use a gold or a silver candle or something like that. And it's worth noting that gold and silver candles, like metallic gold and silver candles, are available if you look on pagan online stores, or I guess regular stores, pagan stores, because most of the traditions use like a gold and a silver candle to represent the god and the goddess. I don't, but the option is there. They will cost you a pretty penny, but the option is there, so that's worth noting. And I swear I saw one that had like a copper candle, but I don't hold me to that one. Okay, that was a lot. Like I said last time, water started as an intuitive sort of thing, and I had to explain it, whereas earth, I had to sit down and reason it all out for myself, because I was having such a spiritual spiritual mind block, trying to figure out what earth meant to me, because it wasn't connecting with the traditional ideas. So I had to do a lot of logical thinking to get to where I am, which is why I've got so much to say today. So this may very well make my computer cry just trying to process it. Okay, the next video will be sort of like a little interlude. I got a really good question about knowing which element is your best element or your natural element, because I said that water is mine. So I'll discuss how to figure that out for yourself in the next video. That shouldn't take very long. So if that confused you, you'll get a better explanation next time. I really hope to see you there. Blessed be.